Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Pac-12 Chat Show Live here on the Voice of College Football channel. Tonight, we're going to be wrapping up the bowl season for Pac-12, which had some ups and had some downs, but overall, lots of exciting games and some really exciting times for the conference. So we are really excited. We want to chat with you guys here in our chat. We want to have you guys call in the show and chat a little bit later. But we're going to start off, of course, by wrapping up the bowl games. So, guys, we've got the full crew. Just real quick, what was your take on the Pac-12's bowl season overall?
It started out with a bang and went out with a whimper. We've known teams to coug it, and funny enough, the Cougars were the one team we knew would struggle in their matchup. I believe the whole group of us, except for Chris, were confident that it would be Pac-12 the rest of the way. And it shows that a game is 60 minutes long. It's not 57 minutes long.
Or 59 minutes and 30 seconds.
Right, yeah.
That is true. As is the case for both USC and UCLA. Too funny. Rick, we're talking real quick. Sorry, Rick just rejoined us. We're talking just real quick about first your main takes on the bowl season. Oh.
Well, how can you not are we there?
Yeah, I got you.
Can you hear me?
I got your audio. Yeah.
Yeah, no. I just, you look at USC and UCLA, just heartbreakers, losing in the last seconds. And congratulations to Washington going into Texas. Difficult place to play, Alamo Bowl, and they were the dominant team. Texas did have an opt-out with Bijan Robinson, but still, that was a great win by Washington. And then you got the Rose Bowl. You have the Rose Bowl, granddaddy of them all. You hear from Utah fans and social media, and our friend Larry Pilgrim and just all the Utes that I know, they were confident they were going to win that game. Back-to-back Pac-12 champions, and they're playing the third place Penn State team, and they didn't get it done. It was unfortunate. Cam Rising went down again, and that was unfortunate. And, for USC, that was just a total breakdown of defense that was kind of ridiculous. I think we had our show 10 minutes after, and really that's the challenge going on doing a post game when you don't have time to fully process it. But I've had 48 hours now, and I've got a different viewpoint of that game, but we can get into that a little bit later.
All right. Well, shall we start off? Yep. Can you hear me? You guys hear me?
Yeah, loud and clear.
Sorry, I'm having all sorts of internet problems tonight, guys, so I apologize for that. All right, well, let's start off digging into the bowls, and
I'm freezing up, guys. Sorry.
All right. Guys, why don't we start with which was quite a game. We did live the Holiday Bowl, and it ended with a doink, which was something else. But let's start off here tonight talking about the Alamo Bowl, where the Washington Huskies actually pulled off a big win over the Texas Longhorns. What were your takes on that?
I was in and out of that game. I really did expect Washington to. It was one of the games I wasn't that sure about, but you saw almost instantly in that game that they were missing Bijan Robinson on the Texas side of the ball. Ewers threw the ball, he threw for a lot of yards, like almost over 350. I know that he threw the ball around a lot, but he missed a lot of throws he could have made, which was very helpful. But really, when you think about that team this year, he's a special back, and having Bijan opt out was a big loss for Texas. But again, it's when you have a team that opens an opportunity for another team. Washington has been a high-powered offense. Texas was able to slow them down a lot. I was surprised that they didn't move the ball as well as I expected them. I thought Penix would have a big day. I mean, I guess 287 is a good day, 2 touchdowns, but I really thought that they would be able to exploit some secondary issues, and they really weren't. They gave them a lot of trouble. So in the end, it turned out to be a solid win for Washington. And at that point, I was really beginning to think that the Pac-12 could be having a very special bowl season, but we'll get into that a little bit later.
Yeah, so like for me, the Huskies, like I had picked Texas in what I thought was a coin flip game where one team's kind of like closer to home or whatever. And I think my opinion of the Huskies is tainted by a couple of things where, I think I was, the early season when we had against them where they had 16 points in the fourth quarter, but we're down by 23 at one point, I think it was against a UCLA team that, I don't know. I think my view on the Huskies was a little bit different than what it should have been based on what happened in that specific game, even though it was only 1 week. Because if they had that little hiccup, and then they had the bigger hiccup at Arizona State. But you look at I think the other thing that kind of biased me is I wasn't around to see their end of season wins. I was on vacation when they played Oregon. And that's that's a really impressive win to me. And it's crazy because we remember when we were talking about this team at the beginning of the year, we were talking about UCLA's schedule and whatnot. It was unclear whether UCLA would play anyone good in the first 5 weeks. And it still wasn't clear if Washington was any good after we beat them and UCLA happened to be 5-0. But things changed in a hurry by the end of the season. And you're looking at a team that I think, in Kalen DeBoer's first year there, a lot of people didn't, we're expecting him to maybe be a bit a good coach and, get things turned around. But, we talk about SC's turnaround. Holy crap. Washington went 11-2. What a great season. That's incredible. The Husky fans should be, and nobody's talking about it, but what a great year, and what a great way to cap a year that was an improvement on your previous season, unlike the schools we're about to talk about.
That's a great point, Chris. And you add to the mix that Penix is coming back. You win the Alamo Bowl against one of your ex-coaches and Steve Sarkisian, and you mentioned it. University of Washington just had a very, very strong year, going from 4-8 to 11-2. Nobody's talking about it, and arguably, they are playing the best at the end of this year. So, congratulations to the University of Washington. Definitely a team that's on the rise, and to be reckoned with next year in the Pac-12.
Yeah, I agree with you guys. I thought Washington would find a way to win, and I was excited that they did. I thought Texas played not as good as I would have expected them to. Although, they were without Bijan, but still, it's not like Texas doesn't have enough talent to do whatever Texas needs. So yeah, kudos to the Huskies. The Huskies turn around, and I think the Huskies sort of, in my book, finished the season as arguably the best team in the conference. So bow down to Washington on that one. All right, so we move on to the next one. Chris, do you have some whiskey?
Yeah, let me take my licks now. I'll just get straight into it. The
Sun Bowl. UCLA has Pitt defeated and finds a way to pry defeat from the jaws of victory.
Yeah, on multiple occasions in that game. So I want to start out by saying, and again, it's crazy to think about that we beat Utah and Washington, who we're talking about as one team won the conference and one team went 11-2, and then we messed around. Charbonnet was out, but we still should have dominated them. Pitt is not good. Like UCLA laid the biggest possible egg you could in that game. And like, it's not like a better team beat us. It's like we did literally everything possible we could to lose that game. We had 4 interceptions. There were 3 fumbles in the game, all of which were recovered. Like Pitt fumbled twice and recovered, and UCLA fumbled a kickoff and lost it to Pitt. So there's like 5 turnovers right there.
They fumbled a kickoff? That's crazy. Oh.
Yeah, right. Except ours didn't go out of bounds.
It might have, though, Chris, it might have been better if it hadn't got out of bounds in USC's case.
And so like there's all those instances, and even with all of that, right? We score with our DTR goes out. We score with our backup quarterback, Garbers, who's like it's the younger brother of the Garbers that used to be at Cal. He comes in, he gets the job done. It's a nice little moment for him. There's 30 seconds on the clock, and all we have to do is stop them from kicking a field goal. Take 30 seconds. And our defense, where I joke about us being glorified Arizona, rears its head again, and we lose on a last-second field goal. And it's incredible because like we had, I think, 30 less offensive plays than them and had about the same amount of total yards. Like we are a much better team than them. We should win that game by like 14 points. Pitt is not good. And we just laid a giant egg, which is kind of unfortunate because even though it's the Sun Bowl, which is not a prestigious bowl, it would have been very, very, very nice to get to 10 wins on a year. That's like something, double-digit wins is something. 10 feels way different than 9, and it's disappointing that we didn't get the job done. But it's also funny because as I was watching it, I swear I was just laughing the whole time because of all the ridiculous things that were happening. And then I was expecting, and then I'll wrap with this. It's like Bill Connolly. Yeah, does the SP plus, like, do like post game win expectancy of like based on like what happened, like yards per play, that kind of stuff, all the analytics, what like should have been. And I was expecting, I think I was expecting Pitt's like post game win expectancy of that game to be like 10%. It was like 2.5%. like which means that it's like crazy that UCLA lost that game, but we did again absolutely everything we could to lose. So
really, what was that like?
Well, yeah, no, that's and then we can jump into that. Is I'd like to thank the Trojans because even though no one cares about the Sun Bowl, anyway, generally, someone else lost after us in a bigger game where no one really cares about what we did.
Who would that be? Oh,
now, and just to be clear, some people like to think of it as a total collapse in the bowl game for both USC and UCLA. We talked about this in the post game, and we like to think of it as joining the Big Ten. Because is there really anything more elite Big Ten this year than collapsing in a bowl game that you absolutely should have won? I don't think so. I think
next week we're going to have our Pac-12 awards, and
we are.
All of us were talking about it, and then we're going to have a Cougadent award, and this is going to go to the game and the team that was able to seize defeat from the jaws of victory in just supreme fashion. And again, we're talking about a couple of games, but there's some from the regular season as well that are just as interesting.
And to Eddie Chase, next week we're going to be doing a kind of a look ahead, kind of a team by team breakdown and look ahead. So we'll talk about who we think will look good next year. I think that this is sort of a silly Twitter thing. Any chance Caleb threatens to leave? No,
I'll save you with that one. Yeah, that's not going to happen.
There's a lot of nonsense on Twitter to not listen to.
But he also has an amazing relationship with Lincoln Riley. Caleb Williams would be successful almost anywhere he goes, but the system that Riley runs is just tailor fit for somebody like a Caleb Williams.
It is. And like I said, you hear a lot of like really weird kind of dumb things on Twitter, I wouldn't put any heed to that. Just like I said, there's a lot of like ridiculousness there right now. Although, and we'll talk more about this. It wouldn't surprise me if USC had some significant defensive changes.
So the loss by UCLA was a big one, right, Chris? Because you guys had 9 wins on the season. That would be
it would have been very nice. Right, it would have been very nice to have 10.
That would have been a 10th win. That would have been 6 teams in the pack. I don't want to downplay this part. I mean, 9 wins is a great season as well. 8 wins the year before, 9 wins trending in the right direction. But that just for just pure optics, being able to walk around saying, 5's cool, but saying that 6 teams, half of our conference had 10 wins or more this year would have really been a nice narrative walking into next year with, it would have been 3 teams with 11 plus wins. So, I mean, those numbers, I know that literally teams cooked it to lose bowl games that were huge, and there's no downplaying it. UCLA absolutely should have won this game. The reason why I picked UCLA, and I had them as a factor of 5, I had them and Rick gave me a hard time. He gave me a hard time for doing that but the reason why I did it was because Pitt was missing literally half of their defense. Literally half.
No, I mean, defense. Tim, if they play again tomorrow, we should win by 14. I
agree.
If a billion things don't go wrong.
Yeah, no, and I just looking at, even with Charbonnet out, which was again a huge part of your offense, but even with him out, I just looked at all the defensive line opt-outs, all the stuff, because really when you look at Pitt preseason and pretty much throughout the season, their big story definitely wasn't their offense. It was their defense and their front 7, especially their defensive line. And when those guys were all opting out, just like rats off a sinking ship, with Captain Narduzzi blaming people as he's going down, that's the way it should have gone, but it didn't. And that's why I picked UCLA as my number 5 out of 7. And bowl games, opt-outs and things are crazy. And I think also, Chris, though, is when things like that happen, it makes craziness happen as well, because it loses a lot of continuity in the flow of the game, and teams play differently. So unfortunately, the Pac-12
Pitt is bad. Pitt is bad. Pitt didn't even play well. UCLA played worse. Yeah.
And I think it's a theme between UCLA and USC. It's been there all year long. I mean, can you imagine if UCLA or USC just had a top 50 defense? What difference that would have made on these two teams?
We could have won. If we had a top 50 defense, we're probably in the Pac-12 championship because we don't lose to Arizona.
Yeah, well, we're not being stingy. We don't want a top 20. We don't want to be, 14 points a game, 15 points a game.
I'd like to just be not one of the worst ones in the country. That would be good.
Yeah, exactly. What do you think, Rick?
I had UCLA as a 1, just because I think I mentioned this a couple of weeks ago when we were picking the games. I just didn't want to get sucked in by UCLA, even though I thought they should win this, but I got suckered in when they were going up to play at Oregon. And even though they had all these opt-outs, I just put that one down there, not knowing if DTR was going to play or not. So when I picked it, I didn't think DTR was going to play. He did play. Maybe he shouldn't have played. But DTR was doing DTR things. They scored that first touchdown, and why he went and headbutted that guy, it was just a classless move, and it kind of showed you where DTR's head was at. You just don't do that. I'm sorry, you're a 5th-year starter. I don't think I've ever seen that in the game in the first quarter. Going jacking somebody's face mask up, and it was a stupid 15-yard penalty. And DTR had three interceptions. The first one was a tip ball. The second one, he zipped it too hard to the tight end. That he shouldn't be zipping it that hard. And the third one, he just didn't see the guy, and that was a DTR mistake. And slowly, that contributed to UCLA's demise. And they were up 28-14, the magical 14 points up on Pitt, and they should have won that game. And they didn't. And our defense let them down. And I know the feeling. USC's defense let us down. And how that happened, I will never know. but being up by 15 with 4.5 minutes, and I knew when we muffed that kickoff, that was the end. There was no way we were coming back from that, and you could just see it melt away. And after the post-game show, I gave Lincoln Riley the benefit of the doubt that, hey, and Alex Grinch the benefit of the doubt that we have to still build the defense through the portal. A lot of this team, being rebuilt the first year was a lot of offensive players. Well, I've had time to think on it. It's the 24-hour rule. And I didn't want to go out and say anything offhand right after the game because, you're a little bit emotional. But you look at it, and if USC is going to be a championship team like Lincoln Riley says, you're going to have to cut bait with Alex Grinch, bottom line. Because this is his 4th year, and the defense is still the same as it was at Oklahoma and in this first year. And you can go ahead and wait and give him another year. But things are different from when Alex Grinch got hired, or the staff got hired. It was to play in the Pac-12, and we're going to the Big Ten, and so things have changed up. And you've got to make a move because it's not going to improve next year. It's not to a championship level, and you don't want to waste Caleb Williams last year.
That last point, Rick, is huge. You don't get Caleb Williams does not grow on trees. USC has been really lucky to have just great quarterback after great quarterback after great quarterback. That's just kind of what happens. Just luckily being in Southern California, you have a lot of those guys coming around. But a lot of argument, and we did try to make the argument earlier in the year, the fact that he doesn't have his pieces, which is, I guess, which is a valid point. But here's where I push back on that one. To me, is what pieces do you think that Tulane had? How many 4- and 5-star defenders did we go up against at how many 4- and 5-star offensive players did we go up against Tulane? Now that I don't want to make it that simple because Pratt probably wasn't the highest rated quarterback, but he made it happen. He made the plays when he needed to make it happen. And Spears, I don't know what he was ranked, but that guy's not a 4- or 5-star running back. I'm not sure how many 4- and 5-star running backs there are out there because that guy's a stud. Their outside receivers, watching the Central Florida game and watching the Cincinnati game, I knew that they had explosive play with all of them because they did it on some fairly decent defenses. So the idea that Grinch needs to get his players in there because he needs to get higher rated players or something. It's not like we're going up against highly rated players. Now, I made those comments to some people on Twitter, and they got back to me saying, okay, well, true, they don't need to be higher rated players, but you need certain guys to fit certain systems, which is also true depending on you running a one-gap defense. I won't go boring into detail, but apparently he doesn't have those guys. But at the end of the day, if you're giving up 45 points, 46 points to Tulane, who is a very good team, and I have, again, thanks to Chris, I have mad respect for Willie Fritz and what that team did this year, especially what they did to USC. There's no reason they should be putting that many points up on a USC defense, and that's where my sticking point is. My concern, though, is, again, there are a couple of guys out there that would be great fits for USC. I think you and Chris were talking about it in our chat, our Discord chat. But the problem is are they willing to come? Because definitely something has to happen. Hopefully these guys, USC has Cobb coming in. They have some studs they're going to fill on defensive line as well. We have some young guys coming in. We have some guys that were hurt last year. Jackson at cornerback, Branch at safety. So there are guys for USC that are, the defense as far as talent next year should make a huge step up. But we lose Tui Pelotu, who is just, again, another one of those guys, just an amazing player. He won't be on that roster next year. So USC really needs to figure it out. Lincoln Riley, I know he has a close relationship with Grinch, but this defense, I don't think, from what we've seen at OU and here at USC, is obviously not going to be the kind of defense that gets there. I'm not that optimistic. I don't think that we're going to be able to pull a guy like Leonard And I know you guys were talking about Patterson, who's I'll let you guys go into a little more over, who is an analyst at Texas, who did a great job. He was a major reason why they give Alabama such fits in that game. He was the analyst in that game. But short of getting one of those guys, I think we're probably looking at having Grinch back for next year, and we're just gonna have to hope, well, at least 3 of us out of the 4, that these guys coming in will make the difference and will be the right guys for his system. Because I would say there's probably a good 75%, 80% chance that Grinch is back next year, in my opinion.
I think you're right, Tim.
So
I mean,
really,
it would be really nice if we could pull something like that, but it would be tough.
real quick, I just want to say, because I've downplayed him. Well, I don't think I've downplayed him necessarily, but like Caleb Williams was amazing again in this game, even though they lost. It's kind of ridiculous to me that he's like only a sophomore, and you get that again next year, because that guy has done so much to make that offense be even. I don't know. I think if you have a lot of other people there, it's not quite humming as much as you like, just because of his escapability and his like. I mean, that dude deservedly won the Heisman and is an amazing player. And then real quick, just as the resident president of the Willie Fritz fan club, I'd like everyone in chat to know that we're still accepting applications. There's always room in the Willie Fritz fan club. And despite the fact that it was a hard loss for you guys, I really do mean that, like, regardless of who they played, besides maybe UCLA, I was going to pick, like, if Tulane was playing anyone in the Pac-12, I would have picked it just because. And like, those things aside, I know that's not a Pac-12 team and we're supposed to stay homer a little bit, but I did really, it was really cool for me to see a coach like that that's at a team that, you know, isn't winning all of the time. You know, like that's the best season Tulane's ever had, probably, right? Before, like, since like winning SEC championships in like the 1940s or whatever. So like that was just really cool to see for those guys. But yeah, like what a crazy game. It was a great game in my opinion. You know, not a lot of defense happening, but like it was as a third party observer or whatnot. It was like certainly exciting, and I think that, you know, giving up that last second touchdown on a crazy drive, by the way, like there were a lot of there are a lot of plays made by that quarterback on that final drive where, you know, if he doesn't make something happen, you walk off the field and you don't feel nearly the way you feel about it. I distinctly remember he had like he's not like a guy that runs all the time. Although he can, he's like good at it. Like the 4th and 6 he ran for, the touchdown that they scored, like that kid on that final drive, that was quite an effort. So I'll let you guys talk about SC as much as you want. I just want to give like a little credit to who I think is a good team, who I think a lot of people in the country probably don't appreciate as much as they should.
Here's the thing. They are a great team, but USC was a much greater team. Hold off before you start throwing knives at me, people. What they did was, and what great teams do, because they were undermanned. I mean, as great as we want to talk Pratt up, he is not Caleb Williams, right? We can go all the way through the rosters and say that. And I would even say the coaching was amazing, especially on offense on both sides. But the issue I have is, and this is one thing that my dad pointed out to me at the end of, you know, after, like Rick, you said, in the moment you can't really process this stuff. But my dad kind of said to me, said, you know, isn't it weird that they swapped out and they had Mario Williams back there getting that very crucial kickoff, because that was a crucial kickoff. You know, you don't want to make a mistake there. So what do? They put the more veteran guy in there. And what does he do? He coughs it out of bounds. But you have to realize Rayleigh Brown had probably 45 kickoff returns in that game. They scored so much. it was just practice time for him, like a jugs machine practice. He was getting kick after kick after kick. So he was nice and warm. And then, in a very crucial part, a coach overthinks himself, puts in a backup kick returner because he's a more veteran guy. And the moment was a little bit too big for him, I think. And he just, he was rusty and he just kicked that ball right out of bounds. That was literally the worst thing that could have happened. Even if, like you said earlier, even if we had fumbled it in play and they get the ball and score a touchdown, then we have the ball back with 3 minutes tied. You know what I mean? That would have been a better situation than how it played out. That safety is what allowed them to win. And at worst case, USC is probably looking at a tie and going to overtime. So I'm a bit surprised that they overthought themselves. Matter of fact, not just Ray Leak in this game, but for the last like 5 to 6 games, he took over for Mario Williams as the kick returner. Then all of a sudden to make that switch, that's a head scratcher, and that's definitely a coach overthinking things.
Well, I didn't know about Willie Fritz until you mentioned him this year, Chris, and got us all educated on Willie Fritz. But I'll tell you right now, I'm looking back at this game. I've had a couple days to digest. This game wasn't won on Monday at the Cotton Bowl. This game was won back in September of last year. Willie Fritz is a darn good coach, and he is going against Alex Grinch's defense once again. And they almost beat Oklahoma. First game of the year in Norman. They lost 35-30, but they had the ball at the end of the game. And yes, I get it. It's USC. There's different players. But it's basically the same scheme. So they had a month to prepare for this game. And I believe in that game last year, their running back was out with a leg injury. He didn't even play. I think he had an ACL or an injury where he didn't even play last year. Tajay Sparks. And so Willie Fritz had this team believing that they could beat USC because they had that month to prepare. They knew what was coming, and they just had to keep on believing and keep on fighting. And you watch that game, they never got down. They kept on fighting. That last drive was amazing. And, you really didn't kind of know that at the time, but I think seeing Alex Grinch's defense before and almost beating him, I think that contributed, to it. And another reason why this defense is not going to work. Another reason why I think USC has to make a change.
Yeah.
Yeah. I go ahead. Sorry.
No, I was just going to say, and I just thought about this, and I'm not saying this loss is on the defense, because even that fumble, the fact that it was the fact that safety and the next touchdown even mattered when they had a drive was the fact that they gave up that long, quick score right away. If you had just made them march down the field, they wouldn't have had time to score that last second touchdown to go ahead and win the game. I don't know how they got that. They somehow worked, the guy through the middle, took advantage of a gap there, and he was able to just dart right through our safeties. It looked like we were in man defense. It looked like we were rushing them, and in man defense, up 15 points. Was it 15 or 14? I think it was 15 points when they scored that touchdown. And I don't know what the thinking behind that was. They literally should have sat back and let them march, knowing we have clock on our side, let them slowly matriculate down the field, not attacking them that way. If instead of scoring on 2 plays and 30 seconds, if USC had made them spend 3 minutes to score that, they run out of time regardless of what happens at the goal line there and safeties, etc. So it's just really a shame. I don't like the play calling there. We can blame tackling. Of course, tackling was a major issue. Of course, that could be the players. But at the end of the day, I'm with you. I think that it'll be interesting see what the ceiling for Grinch is. Maybe he's almost there. Maybe he could figure it out. I want to get a proven guy because we have that's the missing piece. This being the defensive coordinator is the missing piece, and we don't even need to get a Jim Leonard level guy. I don't think we do. We just need to get a guy that's going to give us a top 50, top 30 type defense, and we will be in a lot of playoffs and deep into playoffs.
All right, should we move on to the Rose Bowl?
Let's do it.
All right, so the Rose Bowl, we saw Utah get an interesting comeuppance, I think. A lot of you guys heard Utah fans blabber on and on after the Pac-12 championship that it didn't matter that Caleb Williams got hurt, that they would have won just fine. And those people got really quiet when Cam Rising got hurt and Penn State bulldozed through Utah. What did you guys think of that game, which sadly was the lowest rated Rose Bowl in recent memory?
I'll make mine really quick. Is like Penn State was definitely the better team in that game, but it would have been interesting to me to know what happens in that game with, I think it was tied when Rising got hurt, and Cam Rising being out for the Utes is a big deal. And then the other thing being Phillips being out, and also Kincaid being out. Those are two guys that are, are just like are world-class players for that team. Like Phillips is one of the best corners in the league, and Kincaid is an awesome tight end. That's a huge part of their offense. So you combine those two things with their quarterback getting hurt in what I believe was a tie game at the time. I think Penn State was better that day, but the better team doesn't necessarily always win. And it would have been interesting to see what Utah does. I don't think it's anywhere near the blowout that kind of ended up happening. If those people are playing, and I get that there's like people that don't play, but that's less of a thing in the Rose Bowl, and I think some of those were more because of injuries. But the second that Cam went out, that game changed completely.
Yeah, and to people asking in the chat, I thought Penn State had fans. Guys, 87% of the viewers have nothing to do with either of the team. Viewership of games has to do with a combination of the channel that it's on, the time that it's on, what else is on, the day that it's on, and the rankings of the teams involved. So I think you were looking at probably one of the lowest ratings of teams that were participating in the Rose Bowl, and the game was on January 2nd on a Monday. Not without a lot of other college football around it. So I think that's probably part of why the ratings were so bad. So I wouldn't, don't put our blinders on and be like, but people want to watch Utah. It really has to do. It's all about the network content and the team rankings. And it's not because people don't like Utah or Penn State. It's just, your great aunt Lulu isn't usually watching, a number 12 team versus a number 11 team or whatever they were on a Monday afternoon.
Well, so there were opt-outs in this game, but I think that Penn State had a wide receiver and a cornerback that opted out of the game. But on the Utah side, you're talking about two NFL possible day one draft picks that weren't in this game. Clark Phillips, the third, is arguably one of the, if not the best corner in the country. He didn't play in that game. And anyone that knows defense, especially passing defense, knows that if you have a guy that can lock down one side of the field, like you don't need to worry about that. And you can go man or it opens up a lot of stunts. It opens a lot of your defense. Missing him, having him opt out. I'm not that familiar with their cornerback, but the fact that I don't know really who he is probably would show me that he's probably not on the same level as a Clark Phillips. Losing Kincaid after losing Keithy earlier in the year. Both these guys are NFL tight ends that are also a huge part of Utah's offense. That's going to tell me it's probably a little, is huge for their offense as well. So missing a couple, it's not missing a couple of guys. Both teams were missing guys that were possibly NFL. Obviously, they're opting out their NFL talent. But the tipping point here is losing Cam Rising. And I'm talking to all you Utah fans, if you're out there, who were talking about, you lost Caleb Williams, but, we don't know who would have won and, the championship game, etc. This is what it's like to lose the heart and soul of your offense. Everyone has backup quarterbacks. Everyone losing your quarterback's going to put you into a hole. But when you lose someone the level of a Caleb Williams, or you lose someone who's as important and a gamer as a Cam Rising, a veteran on your team, it dramatically changed the complexion of this game. We will never know how this game would have turned out if he had stayed healthy. I'm thinking it's going to be it's going to be a damn close game. It's certainly not going to be a 14-point loss. So, again, also, if there's anyone out there who's going to talk about the fact that, well, start pulling this crap like, oh, well, look, the Big Ten, the third best Big Ten team beat the best Pac-12 team. The best Pac-12 team has to come with an asterisk on there because there were 3 teams that tied for second place to play USC. Washington, you guys help me out. Washington, and it was Oregon? Washington, Oregon, and Utah. Utah won the tiebreaker, and they got into the game, and they beat USC without Caleb Williams. So can we just get rid of this idea that the third best Big Ten team beat the best Pac-12 team? Because we don't know. That's clearly not even close to knowing what that might be. And then finally on this game, again, it's a shame. I'm just going to wrap up the whole thing in one big false swoop. Like I said earlier, we had a chance to have 6 teams with 10 wins, half of our conference. We had a chance to have 3 teams with 11 wins. We had a chance to finish the season 6-1 in bowl season and really shut up the rest of the country. And some of our best teams decided to just
completely drop the ball.
Well, in Utah's case, Rising got hurt, so there's not much they can do there, right? But I can tell you, USC's get a lot of flack for their defense. Where was Utah's defense in this game? Utah's defense looked terrible in this game. I know, like I said, they're missing Clark Phillips III, but they still should be able to do better than they did against Penn State. They let Penn State just dominate them and gave up too many points on that end of it. But the sad fact about the conference as a whole, as we wrap up this whole thing, is bowl season comes to an end. This was the opportunity for the Pac-12 to make a statement going into next year, saying, hey, wait a minute, stop telling us that we're, Pac-12, we suck, etc. And USC and UCLA literally couged it. They're the front runners for the Coug Award because it was a postseason. I mean, Oregon, we haven't forgot about you, earlier this season. But they're the front runners. But this was an opportunity for the Pac-12 to take a step forward as a conference and say, hey, look, we are a legitimate conference. We are one of the best conferences in football. And USC and UCLA, let it down. And let's face it, though, Utah, you lost your quarterback, but we fizzled out. And because of that, get ready for the offseason, get ready for preseason when everyone tells us that we're pretenders.
All right. Well, with that, let's bring in our first caller. We've got Connor Johnson.
Well, before we go,
yeah,
Kyle, I guess I'm not sure if it's $38 comedy hour, but here's $1 for everyone in chat. Thank you, Kyle.
Thank you, Kyle. We appreciate that.
$38.
We're on a couple of different channels right now. So whichever channel you're on, we appreciate you guys watching, and thank you, Kyle, for that. We really appreciate it. That it helps Mark's channel a lot, and we tremendously appreciate everybody's help and support, not only tonight but all throughout the season. Thank you,
What's up, Connor?
I thought a bowl winner for the back would show up.
And Connor, congratulations again to the Bees on fantastic win in the Vegas Bowl.
Yeah, you did a good job of avenging the Utes and kicking the crap out of the Gators. That was a great game.
Yeah, I think it did a little bit for that narrative. Obviously, you read the narrative over because of opt-outs, because one could argue fighting for more when they said you up, but that's good. The Pacific Northwest is in at least 3 out of the 4. And I have a question for y'all. Out of the top 6, out of the top 5, definitely, I can make an argument for any team to be the best team in the Pac-12 this year.
Yep.
Yeah, I don't think there's
definitely
a firm answer, and that's true. That's often true of conferences, but I think especially true of the conference this year, where you had a lot of teams that all beat up each other, and You can look at it, and there's some coulda, shoulda, wouldas with all of them. But overall, when we look at how the last year was the lowest point for the conference, measurable going back to 1946 under the Pacific Coast Conference when there was Idaho and Montana, and so for the conference to do what it did this year, I think is just a phenomenal turnaround and a credit to each of the institutions that really bought in on what they had to do.
So Connor, really quick, I have a question for you that I think you'll appreciate because I saw you mention it in chat, and then you can explain it to people when people don't understand it right away. But who do you think had a better year, the Pac-12 North or the Sun Belt?
Yeah, it was the Southeast, and after earlier App State and the other team had the win. To real hot Mark show, and ask Mark if he thought the Sun Belt East was better than Pac-12 North. They laughed a little bit as if to brush it off, but they maybe so. So I just think that idea. This was the year that we switched that narrative. I mean, granted, the last 3 years the Pac's been real down, and you could compare us to the Mountain West or the AAC in the last 3 years, but this year, I really think we were probably for the second best conference. I think the Big Ten made some headway back during their postseason, especially in state. But like dollars not was the best. I'll go SEC 1, Pac and Big Ten tied for 2, ACC tied for 3, AA 4, and but yeah, to answer your main question, that was a little bit of a troll job by DeReal to try to check the Pac-12 back down to the level that we have been in the past. The Pac was just having none of that this year.
All right, I'm sorry. Are you worried about a Kentucky fan?
No, we're not. I just wanted.
We're really not worried about Kentucky fans right now.
I look at DeReal more as
hold on. It's January 4th. It's January 4th. Has Kentucky scored yet?
I don't think so.
I'm not sure. Yeah, let's take a look.
DeReal's a good representation for the SEC homer, and I think the SEC homerism should exist. But yeah, as far as Kentucky goes, I always chuckle about that because what have they done for the SEC football? Maybe basketball, sure, but I don't know what the focus of this show is on, if it's supposed to be recapping all of the bowls or if we're going to preview next year. But as far as previewing next year goes, I mean, good luck, right? All these quarterbacks to sort through. Our defense, I think, only gets better. I think all of the defenses get better. I think for the rest of the Pac, it's not much. It's harder to get better where you were at. The Pac-12, I think this year was not ready to be in the playoffs. Utah proved that. USC wasn't ready, not good enough defense. Washington, not enough defense. Oregon State, not enough offense. Oregon, just not good enough on either side of the ball. But next year, I think the Pac-12 could at least get somebody in the CFP, and I'm hoping it's Oregon State. I'm hoping DJU could be that difference for us. But USC, I see doing it. Oregon will get better. Washington will get better. Like next year could be the best conference.
Yeah, no, despite the finishes that we talked about with Utah SC and UCLA, I think there's got to be at least 6 teams that are pretty excited going into the first kickoff next year, given what they did this year. Like as an Oregon State fan, I think you told me before that your entire offensive line is coming back. You think that
4 out of 5.
You think that you filled the hole at right? Okay, 4 out of 5. You think that you filled the hole that was your detriment this year, where if you have a quarterback this year, you might win 11 or 12 games for all we know, right? and I think there's a lot of teams like that, right? I think that SC and UCLA look at each other and they're like, well, if we had even an average defense, we win 11. Well, the SCA did win 11, but they're like, we win 11 or 12. I think Oregon looks at themselves and says, like, we had the most talent. We still have the most talent. And, if we're playing the best football, we're the best team in the conference. I think there's a lot of narratives for a lot of teams. Heck, again, Washington, again, like I almost avoided, like I almost skipped over them as an afterthought, and they won 11 games. There's a lot of fan bases going into next year that I think are going to be really excited about what's happening.
And to that
Yeah.
point, I new fan bases in the Pac. I look at Zona, look at Colorado. I hate to not include you in the preseason top 25 search, but UCLA losing GTR, losing a fair amount. I mean, maybe more could be a surprise for UCLA next year. So UCLA, Zona, Wazoo, Colorado could all be on the come up, and the top 5 is going to be thinking they could win the Pac and thinking they could go to the CFP. So, look at the NorCal schools. Those are the only ones that really are going to be down bad. I mean, even ASU with Dillingham, their transfer portal has been successful. Drew Pine could do some things in that system. So that's why I say it's just going into next year. We're being slept on as a conference as a whole, but realistically, any team in the top 5 or 6 could come through.
Yeah, I think that UCLA is, of all the teams that we've just discussed, has the biggest chance to take a step back, just because I do think that you can't understate what DTR and Charbonnet does for that team. But again, Chip Kelly has shown time and time again, he pulled in Bobo out of like a rabbit out of a hat. He brought Charbonnet in originally through the transfer portal. So I think if anyone's proven that they can make some damage here in the spring and pull in some difference makers to fill in the spots they're missing, and quite frankly, how much will Chip Kelly's offense need to rely on more? How quickly can they onboard him and get him moving? But I forget the guy. Sorry, your backup quarterback, Chris.
Well, Garber's right now, but there's also Justin Martin. And then there's a couple other guys. There's actually 6 quarterbacks on the roster right now, but they won't all be there by the time the season starts.
I think, Chip Kelly, might be coach speak, but Chip Kelly talked up the fact of how much Garber's has improved in the offseason and how comfortable they are with him. So, they might have the luxury of allowing Garber's to play the first 5-6 games while they're getting more onboarded. And we'll see. And again, even that's a stretch. I'm saying that now here in January. We'll see who Chip, because Chip has lived and died through the portal. He is a true portal guy, because God knows he doesn't like to recruit. So he's gonna pull in some talent. I like what I saw. I think it was Alicia and Michael on the Raina Troy show. We're talking about, what was really nice to see at the USC game. If you want to take a silver lining, USC fans, is this: we were without our Remington All-American center, Remington finalist All-American center. We were without our All-American left tackle, probably first-round draft pick. Both guys are studs. And we still played well on offense, with that. And we just pulled in this guy, a tackle from Florida, who was a prototype size. And we've heard a lot of great things about the young guys in the USC line. And I'm not counting out Henson. The guy is a proven offensive line coach that we basically stole from Texas A&M. And I love the development of this line, and I'm really positive about our offense. As much as we are slamming the situation as far as Grinch, that they got the guy from Oklahoma State, Cobb, the middle linebacker. They got, I forgot his name though, the defensive tackle from Arizona State. So USC is plugging some needs in. We get a couple of guys back. We get Branch back at safety. We get Jackson back at corner. So I think our defense, talent-wise, is going to take a huge step up. The question is still going to be, what can Grinch do with it? That's going to be our wild card. I want to see what Washington does on defense, because they're still going to have McMillan back. They're still going to have who's the other receiver? Someone help me. I don't know. Anyway, the Penix throwing the ball. I think that their offense is going to be solid still. Pardon?
And thank you again, Kyle, for that. Tremendously, thank you again.
Uduze, right? Those guys. I mean,
Yeah.
that offense is not going to. That offense is not going backwards. It's what can they do to pick up on defense, and how can they use their success? Because a lot of these teams kind of didn't do the greatest thing in recruiting, but how do they turn these 11, 10, 9-win seasons around and go to the portal and say, hey, look, you're the piece we're missing to take us to that next level. So hopefully that's what we're going to see in the Pac-12.
Hey, sorry about that. To Tim's point with USC, I dropped out after that, but Tarquin, the transfer that y'all are going to get, right tackle or maybe left tackle, was probably Florida's best offensive lineman to do with the Tats when we played them. So that's a pretty solid pickup, especially to replace what y'all are losing.
Yeah, we're losing Haskins. Yeah.
Yeah, and so this is a guy. Not only is he built the right way and is a good football player, but he's an upperclassman. He'll be a leader for that line, and I think the rest of the line, he just comes in and fills the space, and it's like a plug and play.
That's a great point there, Connor. And again, congratulations to the Beavers. You and Washington have been the hottest team to end the Pac-12 teams to end the year. I think a lot of these teams, the Pac-12 built some respect. They went 3-4. Obviously, no bowl win last 2 years, but they could have easily lost another with Oregon pulling that one out. And they could easily be 2-5, or they could be 5-2 if USC and UCLA just don't implode. But each team has questions that they have to answer going into next year, not only to compete in the Pac-12 but on a national level. If you want to get national respect. Now, you've heard me say this before, but historically, the brand that drives this conference, I know a lot of people don't want to hear it, but it is USC. They built this brand. And they're going to be moving on. And what I mean by that is USC's won national championships before. They've won a lot of BCS games, a lot of New Year's Six games. Yes, we did choke. I understand. We lost that game. But at the end of the day, USC is a brand. One of the teams that has questions is Utah. Now, Utah's a great team. And I was a little bit surprised on Twitter. This guy came at me. And I said, hey, you guys were 0-2 in the Rose Bowl. And he said, I'd rather win 2 Pac-12 championships because the Rose Bowl is an exhibition. He would rather lose the exhibition. Now, it's funny because if you want to be respected on a national level, you have to win games that matter. And Utah is growing. They go from the WAC to the Mountain West to the Pac-12. Well, they're 0-4 in their last bowls, okay? And they don't. They like to play these little games with BYU, and I get it's a rivalry, and you're bickering about who's the best in the state. That's cute and everything. And yes, you have won back-to-back Pac-12 championships. But USC and UCLA are going to be moving on, and the Pac-12 is going to have to keep on earning their respect. And one of those teams is Utah. And what it's going to come down to, and it always does, is you're going to be judged. Who have you beat on a national level? And they're going to remember that Florida loss going down there in the swamp. They're going to remember 0-2 in the Rose Bowl. Yes, there's opt-outs. Everybody has them. But you know what? Kyle Whittingham has been there for 18 years. He's built more with nothing. There's always guys that are stacked up, ready to go. And why they didn't have a DB to replace Carl, I'm not going to say you're going to replace Clark Phillips III, but you've got to figure it out. I mean, case in point, last year, they had to put in a running back, Bernard, to play a little bit of DB. What happened there? You have to shore up your secondary. So there's questions that Utah is going to have to answer, not only to compete again in the Pac-12 because everybody's getting better, but on a national level if you want to get respect.
And we want to thank you, Seattle Skier. Go ahead. Actually, Tim, you were going to say something to Kyle, I think.
Thank you. I actually typed in there. Thanks, Kyle, again for another $100 super chat. Appreciate you
and
watching and supporting the show. Mark, really appreciate
tremendously. Thank you so much. And Seattle Skier, thank you to you too. You guys, this really does a lot to help the entire Voice College football community. And we really appreciate it. And so does Mark. And truly, guys, thank you for your help and support. Not just today, but all season long. It truly makes a huge difference to make all this possible for everybody. So thank you guys. All right, I think we got Connor back. Sorry, go ahead.
One of the other things too is that people are going to point out, well, hey, Penn State's third in the Big Ten, and so this is something Utah's going to have to stand down on in the future, because people will remember this is James Franklin. Okay, James Franklin 6 years earlier lost to Clay Helton. All right, I'll repeat that. James Franklin lost to Clay Helton. And Penn State was ranked number 5 at the time, and they had a much better team. They had Saquon Barkley, who's now run, as you know, with the New York Giants, and they had Trace McSorley. Trace McSorley is a backup quarterback in the NFL. That was a very good team. And they had Chris Godwin. Godwin's a wide receiver in the NFL, and they had Gesicki. Gesicki's a tight end. They had a lot of NFL players on that team. And USC, with Clay Helton, beat Penn State, who was the champion that year, I believe. Or they were the second-place team, because maybe Ohio State was in the playoff, but they were either first or second. Okay, and so that's another stain, is that Kyle Whittingham, who is arguably Utah's greatest coach ever, okay, you're back-to-back Pac-12 champions, and you lose to James Franklin and Penn State. I don't know.
This is a little tough.
You're gonna have to answer that down the road. Yeah. Your last bowl win was the Hearts of Dallas Bowl. That bowl is defunct. Your last bowl win before that was the year before, the Farms Bowl. That bowl is also defunct. Okay? And then you won 2 Las Vegas Bowls. So you have yet to win, as a member of the Pac-12, a major bowl. Yes, I do remember the Sugar Bowl, Utah fans. That was in 2008 when you were a member of the Mountain West. Okay? And yes, you did beat Alabama in Nick Saban's first year. But other than that, yes, you are back-to-back Pac-12 champions, but on a big national stage, you're 0 for 3 in Florida and 2 Road Bowls.
Well, I have a hot take on that point, Rick. And I think Utah as a whole, the program is right there. I think, and I hate to knock a young man, but Cam Rising has choked in all of his big opportunities. And I know he got hurt this last one, but if you think about the pick against Florida, if you think about against Oregon this year, you need your quarterback to at least be 50% successful in big-time games. And Cam Rising was a transfer from Texas, and he's great, but does he win the conference great? I just don't know, and I'm not sold. And maybe he comes back, and maybe he can prove it. But, choke is unfair. I just think maybe there was a reason he transferred from Texas. You got to think that most transfers, when they transfer to a new place, follow a coach, i.e. USC and Caleb Williams. And then sometimes you can go up, and Nick's certainly went up a level from where he came from, and we're hoping the same for DJU. But Rising might have just been a backup at Texas, and he might be. We might have seen his ceiling. I don't know if we've seen Utah's ceiling, but we might have also seen Utah's ceiling, though.
Connor, do you lose anything on defense also, or are you pretty much like is the whole squad is everyone that Jonathan Smith wants to have around coming back to run it back?
We get better, to answer your question. For example, this year Jaden Grant was a 5th-year senior, a walk-on safety. He's good, but we have another safety who was hurt this year, Alton Julian, who's better. And then Katana Oladapo, our strong safety, is coming back for another year. we reload at linebacker. Corners will be hard to fill because Wright and Austin are both trying to go to the NFL. But Smith's built the program now where the backups fit the mold, and you've hoped that they've developed to this point. Jaden Robinson had a pretty good game against Florida. He's a corner that'll play next year. And then on the D-line, I think we have two guys coming in right away that'll play. We have a 4-star defensive lineman out of Vegas. He's the highest-rated defensive lineman in the pack, Kelsey Howard. And then we have a JUCO transfer who's the number 1 defensive lineman from JUCO. So those two guys right away will plug and play. Like I said, our corners we have to rebuild. But Trent Bray in this defense will be the strong point again, and we don't need DJU to be hero ball. Come in and do enough, and it should be enough to get us to the Pac-12 championship, to get us to the, to win the Pac. I seriously think that this team could be a CFP contender next year, as crazy as that is to say.
No, it's certainly exciting, and I know that just real quick, I agree with both of your and Tim's point about UCLA maybe being the most likely to take a step back. I'd have to look more at how Washington is constructed and what's going on there roster wise, to be honest, because I don't especially know. I know they're bringing back Penix, but I don't know what else is going on there, and there's for some teams there's I'm not saying Washington was lucky, don't get me wrong at all, but I'd have to think about that a little bit more, but I will save my Homer optimism story for what we're doing, and why that might not be the case for next week when we do a more in-depth look forward on everyone.
Well, to your actually, I would say to those who don't follow the Pac, may have been rightfully sleeping on Washington, but Washington still has the guys. I mean, Jimmy Lake is a defensive coach, and he's been recruiting defensive players these last few years. And then you get one of the best offensive minds in DeBoer with one of the best transfer quarterbacks. So their offense is fine, but I think people sleep on their defense. I think their defense will be fine because they've built as much as SEC people or other conferences don't know, but Washington's been a top recruiting school. I mean, top 25 certainly for the last 5 years, and nothing has really changed. And so that's why I have Washington higher than UCLA. I also I'm more sold on DeBoer than Chip Kelly slightly when it comes to offensive minds. And I think DeBoer needs to do a little more to prove that. I just think Chip might be that was a rightful whoa. That was a bold statement. But DeBoer, I think, will prove to be the better offensive mind. I don't know if Chip is set in his ways or it's getting stale. But the Pac-12.
I'm gonna give you one quick stat just to defend Chip, even though he has a number of flaws, including our defense and lack of high school recruiting over the last 5 years. The one thing that I am going to defend him on is offense and scheming, because people give a lot of credit to Charbonnet, but just to give one little piece of what I'm going to talk about next week is the running game. I think led the country in yards before contact, meaning that scheme, not there's holes, and it's not like we have 5 All-Americans on the offensive line, and Charbonnet is great, but the backs that we've had before, literally all 4 of Joshua Kelly, walk on from UC Davis, gets a scholarship, now in the NFL, still playing. Felton, running back in the NFL, still playing. Britton Brown transfer from Duke in the NFL on the Raiders still. Charbonnet gonna go to the NFL. Now you add to the rushing attack that has the most yards before contact, the kid from Ball State that we just got, and that team has one of the higher yards after contact. So you have a running back that's great after contact, put in the offense that has the most yards before contact. And those two things add up to some pretty good things. There are some holes on the line that I think we lose 3 of the 5, but they've been filling them kind of decently. I'll go back to what I said at the beginning of the year when people were asking about, Coda being gone and Kyle Phillips being gone, and can we still move the ball on offense? Like the one thing the offense, I will not be worried about the offense and what was a top 5 offense last year that might be just as good next year. I mean, who knows?
I was not trying to not.
And Connor, we gotta move on in just a minute. Sorry, go ahead, Connor. Give us your final thoughts. We got to move on to Will and Dr. C.
Final thoughts. I just think DeBoer's UCLA is still a top 5 to 10 offense under Chip Kelly, but DeBoer might be top 3. I mean, he was this year, right? And so I don't think it's to knock Chip anymore. I mean, if I were to rate offensive coaches,
fair enough.
LR, DeBoer, Jonathan Smith, Chip Kelly, Dillingham still in the pack. So, Shador at Colorado might make some noise. I just ultimately think Washington, like I said, under Lake recruited defense. Washington next year going in, I don't know what happened at ASU, but I have to think that Washington is going to be preseason 1 or 2. And personally, I know that the rest of the conference would disagree. I think Oregon State is probably 1 or 2. So I'll leave it at that. And hey, this show all year long has been the funnest.
We've loved having you, and we hope you'll stay with us in the off season.
Definitely, yeah, man. I'm here for the long haul, back to pack.
Let's go Beavs.
Let's go Beavs, and happy New Year to everybody.
Happy New Year,
everybody on here. See you
Thanks,
guys.
Connor.
Talk to you soon. Thanks, Connor.
Happy New Year.
All right, thank you to Connor, and let's welcome Will and D and Dr. C. Guys, welcome to the show.
What's up, guys?
How's everyone doing?
Dr. C.
Doing good.
Love the pipe.
We'd be better if we could catch a kickoff, but hanging in other than that.
Do you guys think that Utah would have had a good chance of coming back if Cam Rising never got injured, or do you think they just weren't winning the game?
I think that Penn State was better and they probably still lose anyway, but that, they go from having, a glimmer of hope where, again, the better team doesn't always win the game, right? And I think Penn State was playing as the better team that day. But like Cam being in the game, miracles can still happen. But I think once he gets hurt, like that twinkle in their eye, or that like idea that like, oh, this, it's still possible, it might happen. Like as soon as he gets hurt, like the whole, it went from like, there's a chance, or we can move the ball and keep possession, we get lucky, we score a couple times, the whole feel of the game changes, in my opinion. But no, I think they still probably lose. I don't think that they have like this tremendous chance of winning, but I think without him, it gets real hard, real fast, as it turned out.
Could you imagine what the game would have been like if USC had played Utah without Cam? Do we win that?
Yeah,
Yes.
in a runaway.
Yeah. I think it played a huge part. I mean, the quarterback's so important, but especially in a place like Utah where your backup's probably going to be a 2-star JUCO, player. That was
or a no star.
Yeah, I was being generous.
I mean, and that doesn't mean. I mean, he wasn't rated. There's lots of reasons why a guy's not rated by those services. And before the Utah fans all come after me with pitchforks, again, those rating services are far from reliable in a lot of ways. But to Z-Thies, didn't Utah? Yeah, with Cam Rising.
What Utah will always have.
Utah
will always have
Z-Thies,
back-to-back Pac-12 championships.
Just like obviously Z-Thies, he's asking. Didn't Utah run all over SC? That's where he's asking if there wasn't Cam Rising, if they'd had an injury, they certainly wouldn't have been able to.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, Cam is just he's a fantastic player. That it was a really unfortunate that he didn't get to play a big part in that game like he would have. That was terrible. I do have one question though, and was the one question I want to get ask. Is I know the defense for USC was I mean I can't talk about it. It still hurts.
There wasn't any.
Yeah. But one of my main concerns was watching the USC play this year is the offensive line. I felt it was atrocious. What do you guys feel about that? Or how do you guys feel? I know that you followed USC way closer than I have.
Tim is our offensive line guru. I'll give you my 2 cents, then I'll turn it over to him because he is the guru. We had some great offensive linemen, but we didn't have a lot of depth, is my take. And when some of those guys got hurt, it came back to haunt us in a big way. But Tim is our total guru of offensive line.
Is that the problem? Because every time you watch,
Dr. C, let Tim.
Oh, yeah.
Tim can answer it better than I can.
No, you answered it perfectly. It's exactly the issue. USC did not have a lot of depth. When Voorhees was out of the game at left guard, and then you lose Elon at center. We saw we went deep into that line, and again they held up well, which is going to look good for next year. The problem is going to be if you watch on that play where the safety happened and the play before that, they were getting penetration from the left side. If we had our All-American left guard there, I would have to think that maybe we may possibly have done better.
Absolutely. But like it seemed like all year, like Caleb was running for his life.
Yeah, Caleb. Exactly what and I apologize for cutting you off, but that's exactly what I wanted to say was like Caleb does a lot in the passing game to make. I don't know how good. I mean, and again, these other guys watch them SC a lot closer than I do. But in my opinion, in the times that I did see them, like Caleb hides a lot of mistakes when they happen for that offensive line in the passing game by being as great as he is escapability wise. I think it's his best. I get that he has a great arm and I get that he can sling it, but I think his best trait this entire year was turning what would be sacks for, I think, 80 or 90% of quarterbacks in college football and consistently avoiding a sack and turning it into like a 10-second scramble gain for 20 yards. Like, he's incredible.
One big thing he did is he talked about his favorite players. He talked about specifically Barry Sanders and how Barry Sanders would get low and do that little dip move, kind of like we saw happen actually to Figueroa with Spears. You would see him make that move all the time. And I'm hyping our offensive line, but make no mistake about it. Without that magician work he had in the backfield, it would not have played out the way it did this year. And he did hide a lot of flaws. But when this front five was healthy, so the issue is a lot of people don't know, casual fans, even USC casual fans, that Bobby Haskins played almost the entire year at tackle with a shoulder injury, with shoulder issues, and he played. The guy was a champ. He was transferred from Virginia, and he played through a lot of pain and a lot of injury. And it was Caleb Williams that was able to make that happen. Voorhees played through a lot of injuries as well. That's why he kind of shut it down towards the end of the year as well. So it was a patchwork offense, and we talked about it being really thin, like Tony said. But it was a guy like a generational talent. I hate that word. I'm not going to use it because everyone says it. They say it every 2 or 3 quarterbacks. But he was the difference maker back there when that offensive line wasn't healthy and we didn't have quality backups. The guys had to play hurt. So yeah.
How much did it hurt I guess Lincoln Riley's offense not bringing Bill Bodenbaugh to USC? Him sticking around with Oklahoma. I've heard some people say he's the best offensive line coach in the country.
Were those?
I don't think
I
USC's
have to differ.
offense was hurt.
As a Notre Dame fan, I have to differ there.
Yeah, I'll just be honest. I don't think USC had any problems on offense the entire season.
He's getting a lot of play from putting a couple of like interior offensive linemen into the NFL, beat him, Bob. But the guy Henson we got from Texas A&M also is doing the same thing. I don't think we're missing that much from him. And quite frankly, looking at the Oklahoma offensive line, I wasn't overly impressed with that offensive line this year. And here's the thing. Here's the one thing about it. You can't say Riley this, Riley that. He's been there. So he's the one that was recruiting and developing that offensive line. He's the one key factor. And their offensive line play was terrible. So are we missing that much? I think at the time I was sad, and I thought he'd be a great pickup, especially as far as recruiting is concerned. But he hasn't done anything impressive recruiting wise or really on the field with their 6th and 7th season. So.
Well, I feel better now because I was really bummed at first. I was like, "Oh man, we that was a key piece." Because the offensive line, the most important, other than the quarterback, the most important unit in football.
I was until Henson, but I'm with you. I was bummed too, but Henson's a good pickup. And then Will's right. Heinstadt, what's his name? Sorry, Will.
Easthand, and then Sharon Moore from Michigan is also amazing.
Oh yeah, right, yeah. More, yeah. So I mean, there are better. He is not the best. He's good though. I'm not gonna downplay that.
I think our offensive line got better under Henson. He's an excellent coach. I mean, the announcers even said during the Cotton Bowl, look at how much time Caleb Williams has to throw. But part of what looks like he's running for his life, and I think getting to your point there, Dr. C, love having you on the show. Thank you. Is that he does scramble, but part of Caleb Williams' elite quarterback play is he's so good off platform, and he keeps his eyes downfield. He's moving his lower body. It almost gives him an advantage by getting off of platform because he can throw the ball so well. I mean, that play to Brendan Rice where he had like 8 seconds and he veered to the left sideline and then he's throwing the ball. I'm like, what are you doing? And he throws it on a rope and Brendan Rice just makes an excellent catch right on the sideline. That was just ridiculous. And he's been doing that all year. But by watching Caleb Williams all year, you know, a lot of the time at the beginning of the year, God, he's holding on to the ball too long. He's holding on to the ball too long. No. Yeah, he is because he sees the field so well that he's trying to make that 30-yard pass versus getting 6 yards and going out of bounds or sliding. And a lot of people are not used to watching that style of quarterback play. He is totally different. You cannot compare him to anybody. He is one of one. If you try comparing him to somebody or why isn't he scrambling? Why isn't he running? You just don't get it. I admit I was like that the first couple of games. I was very critical. But now watching him for 14 games, my God, he is hands down the best quarterback that USC's ever had.
Wow.
Wow, you guys have had a lot of good quarterbacks.
Not like him. Not like him.
And then the only other thing that concerns me about Williams is I think he takes unnecessary punishment. He doesn't slide. He goes ahead and tries to get that extra 2 or 3 yards, but that means a hit to the shoulders. It scares the heck out of me. Have you guys noticed that, or am I overreacting?
He likes to engage. You know, he likes to engage, and maybe he should get down a little bit sooner. I know what you're talking about, Dr. C, and I worry about that as well.
Do you guys remember the K-State quarterback? The one that ran every single play pretty much?
Martinez?
No. What was his name?
About how many years ago?
It was 2011, 2012, I think.
Michael Bishop or L. Roberson?
No.
You may be talking about Bishop. I think he is talking about Bishop, Rick.
He would run it basically every play. And I remember Kirk Herbstreit goes, Kansas State is just one ankle away, one ankle sprain from being, 0-5.
It might be their offensive coordinator. God, I know who you're talking about. His name starts with a C. His first name starts with a C.
Yeah, I believe it was like a C. Yeah, it was like.
I know who you're talking about.
Dr. C, to answer your question, though, I think Caleb Williams is pretty good at getting down. I think a guy who maybe needs to get down more would be a Cam Rising, and I think that's why he gets knocked out of games. That guy, I'll never forget Carson Palmer going up to Eugene. I think it was a sophomore year. I can't remember. And he was going down the sidelines, and he decided to lower his shoulder into the defensive back at Oregon and broke his collarbone for the rest of the season. I mean, sometimes and he's going out of bounds anyway. Sometimes you just got to be smart, get out of bounds, or get down as the quarterback. I agree with both of you guys. I think I'd like to see him do it more, but I think he does a pretty good job of it. But he's definitely not a Cam Rising who looks like he's out there looking for contact. That's a recipe for getting knocked out of games.
Yeah, absolutely. Wasn't it Luck that also had that issue? Not sliding enough, taking too much punishment, and shortened his career probably 5 seasons.
Oh, I don't follow the NFL that much.
Yeah,
but he had
a lot of more complicated issues, I think, as well.
And the fact that he's, the guy has a life outside of football. He was never going to become a scrambled brain guy just to stay in the league for a little bit longer. And at Stanford, he had elite offensive lines, so he wasn't getting hit very often in college.
No.
Fantastic.
All right, guys. Anything else here? Go ahead. Obviously.
No, I was just saying that Andrew Luck's offensive line with the Colts was just horrendous. He never had it. He never had a great offensive line there.
Yeah.
I got the last thing. Percentage-wise that our DC returns next year.
Dr. C, was his name, was it Colin Klein?
Yeah, I believe that was him, yeah.
That guy was big, though. Do you know what I mean?
He was big, yeah.
Bigger guys like that almost look like a fullback. I mean, I get it, but and I'll tell you what people don't realize is I was watching you, dude. Caleb's got some thick legs, man. I didn't realize that until just recently. That dude's got like running back, like legs. So, but I just don't think because was it Dixon from Oregon? Guy's on his way to. He could have tiptoed to the Heisman Trophy. Oregon might have been in the BCS championship game, but he blows his knee out. I think it was on was that non-contact? I can't remember. Anyway,
it was against ASU, right?
It was horrible. The guy was such a stud, and that's why you don't want your quarterbacks, because we talk about getting hit and whatever, but a lot of knee injuries are non-contact, and that's what happened to Mo Hassan, our backup quarterback, in the spring game. He was running, he took a weird little step, and boom, blew his knee out. You just don't want these guys running around for a number of reasons, but it's part of what he does, right? Would Caleb Williams be the guy he is if he wasn't scrambling and picking up 10 or 66 yards on a play? So,
all right. Well, thank you guys. Mr. C, any final thoughts?
Oh, yeah, that was my question. Percentage-wise, how percentage-wise would our DC returns?
80.
How sure are you? 100%?
Not 100.
50-50.
50.
I think higher than, Tim's percentage is pretty high. Is probably like I put it at like 75, but I think that's a lot higher than most people think or expect. But I think they're gonna give him another year once like things quiet down. I feel like they try to give him another year to figure it out. And then, if it's more of the same, then maybe something changes. But I don't have the inside knowledge on that side of it.
Yep.
Like, whereas ours, I think it's a lot more likely.
Nor do I, but I'm just saying I said 80 because of the simple fact that only if they can land a guy of like a Patterson or a Leonard level, I just don't think we're going to be able to do that. They're not going to go out and grab like
I don't even think they're trying, to be honest.
A mid guy, So I agree, it's very likely he's back.
Yeah, I don't think they're trying to go still Gary Patterson. So we'll see. It'll be interesting. Well, Dr. C, thank you so much. We're glad to have you.
Hey, thank you guys so much. This is awesome. You guys are awesome.
Well, hey, we appreciate, like I said, we appreciate having you every week. Next week, we're going to do some fun things. We're going to have some season look wrap-ups of each team and some awards. So we hope everybody will join us for that. It'll be a lot of fun.
Absolutely. Count on me for the awkward questions.
They're not awkward at all. They're good.
Thank you so much for calling. You always have great questions, Dr. C.
You always have good questions.
Appreciate it.
Thanks, Dr. C. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, Dr. C.
All right. Good night, everyone.
Mr. Will.
So, what do you guys say? The early preseason, early like 2023 favorites to make the championship. What do you say? Is the Trojans and the Dogs, and the Huskies? What do you say? Definitely for sure. Those are the two favorites.
Along with Oregon.
Yeah, you can't leave Oregon out with mixed bag.
Yeah, no, I mean Oregon is up there.
Beavs with DJU.
I don't think you can sleep on the Beavs. Like the Beavs won't be. People will not be surprised by the Beavers next year, but they're in the mix. Yeah, I mean, it's one of those four, I guess.
But, and by the way, real quick, UC Region Gumby, Gumby Too Sexy Now, gets a special shout out for that profile picture with Oski and our favorite no longer Cal coach from TCU, Sonny Dykes. I love that.
Well, I think
That's great.
Oregon State solved their question. Their question was at quarterback, so they'll pick up a couple wide receivers. So now USC and UCLA have questions. You know, USC has a question about the defense, obviously, and UCLA is okay. Who's going to be the quarterback, and what's going to happen with their defense? Washington's pretty solid because you got Penix coming back. So that's what's going to be interesting about the Pac-12 next year.
I think we won't know a lot until I think a lot can change from right now until the spring because there is a lot to still happen transfer wise before we even get close to knowing what the full picture is. So like we can guess all we want and we'll talk about it next week of like what we think and like what the future holds. But like on the UCLA perspective, you know, without getting too much into detail of like the boring people with it, there's a lot of things that if they happen, and I don't know how many of them will happen, but if they happen, the outlook of next year looks tremendously different on the positive end compared to if they don't happen, but we won't know for another 6 months, maybe. I don't know.
It's going to be interesting.
Well, the Pac-12 may have went 3-4 in bowls, but you take away UCLA and USC who are leaving. It's 3-2. It's a winning record for the Pac. So
that's
overall,
the funny thing,
we'll
Will.
play for the Pac. Still a success.
That's the funny thing, Will. All the teams
and
that are
Will,
leaving
as we like to
conferences
say-
for different colleges, they actually lost their bowl games.
Yeah, they went
Oklahoma, USC, UCLA, and
Texas, yeah.
All lost their bowl games. So there's a couple conferences kind of laughing right now.
I like to say we took the Big Ten model of getting into a New Year's Six game and then collapsing. It makes us part of the family, part of the Big Ten family. Too funny. Will, any other final thoughts?
Any final thoughts? Our Texas Buckeye wants to know when we're moving to the Big. I don't think we're going to move anytime soon, but who knows? With this college football realignment, anything's possible. So
it is. We'll see.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Will, thank you for calling in. We're glad to have you.
Of course. Thanks for having me, guys. A lot of fun as always.
All right, TBM. Any final thoughts?
No. Pitt sucks, but UCLA sucks harder. So again, disappointing. But next week we'll look forward to the future. Thanks everyone for hanging out.
Thank you. LBC? Oh, did we lose LBC?
Sorry about the internet problems. Yeah, I'm circling the joint.
We all are tonight. I think the internet's screwy tonight. We'll blame Starlink. Oh, did we lose him again?
I'll go right now. Until Ricky comes back. You there?
Go ahead.
Can you hear me?
I can hear
We
you.
can hear
but
you now.
you're-
Go ahead, Rick. Oh, we lost Rick
Sorry,
again.
guys.
Tim,
We got
just go ahead. Rick, hold on, give your internet a sec. Tim will go ahead first.
Well, hold on. I forgot what I was going to say now. No, okay, I was frozen. I was trying to feel like I was still. I just wanted to think that hopefully next season there's a lot of guys coming back that are injured. The Pac-12 has made their point. We do have the quarterbacks. We are again the quarterback conference, like we always have been. We fell off. I think the problem with the Pac-12 when we went into our little bubble for 3 or 4 years is the coaching absolutely disintegrated, which led to issues with quarterbacks going out of conference. Now again, Pac-12 has reestablished itself as the quarterback conference with very capable coaches. And regardless of the bowl record, we know the UCLA and USC games should not have turned out that way. But a win is a win and a loss is a loss. I think that the future is still bright for the Pac-12.
Thanks, Tim. LBC, anything final? I think LBC's frozen again.
Happy New Year to everybody. Thank you for all the viewers. Okay. If you can hear me, thank you, and have a good evening.
We got you on that one.
Good night.
Hey, we just want to thank you guys for sticking with us all through the season, for having some fun with us here during bowl season. It was an exciting bowl season. The conference had certainly done so poorly in the past 2 years that getting the wins that they got was fantastic. Seeing Washington beat Texas, Oregon State just had a phenomenal win over Florida. We look kind of at the USC and UCLA collapses and shake our heads, but it is what it is. And I think we don't want to take anything away from Pitt played their hearts out. Most importantly, Tulane, who you guys have heard us for the whole year talk about Tulane. Some of you have heard me on the channel talk about it almost 2 years about why Tulane is a strong program and a strong school and belongs in the Power 5 anyway. So please don't misinterpret anything we've said as taken away from Tulane. But most importantly, we want to thank you guys. Thank you for spending the night with us. And next week, we're going to take a look back on the whole season for each team. And we're going to do some awards. So we're going to want you guys to chime in on that. And we'll probably have some polls and stuff that we want you guys to participate in. So next Wednesday night, 10:30, we're thrilled to have you guys. Have a great night. And thank you all for joining us. Have a happy New Year, everybody.